Well, look, the two of you can move even more over.
Right?
They don't want to.
Yeah. Jackson, it feels like stalking.
You don't have to. You can sit where you're comfortable. Wherever you're comfortable.
I'm trying to slide my notes. I don't know what's going on.
I'm going to sit right
You
here.
already lost the pen.
Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Directors Workshop, Monday, July 16th, 9:30 in the morning. Call the meeting to order. Move to adopt the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Debbie. Do we have a second?
Would you like to change it up before you adopt?
Okay, yeah, I do want to change it up. I see a robust audience here today. That's nice to see. We don't know why you're here. We're glad you're here, but just open comments. Our first item is something that's been delayed for a couple of meetings, something that's, at least for me, is very important, and that's to take an hour and reflect on where we are as a board and management and our interactions. I'm going to make the assumption that most in the audience are not here for that. We're going to spend about 10 minutes on that. Budget planning follow-up, we're going to spend about 10 minutes on that. Planning for town hall sessions, garage apartment recreation fee policy, and condo associated management issues. Each of those is 10 or 15 minutes. So assuming that you might not want to hear an hour of us talking about how we're communicating and are we letting management be management, I would propose, with the board's approval, to flip that, still maintain that, and work through the other 5 agenda items until 10:45, and then honor the detailed discussion of that. If my assumption is wrong that you really want, I mean, you're welcome to stay for all that, but my assumption is that you might be more interested, I'm talking to the audience, might be more interested in those action items than our 45 minutes of dialogue about how we are communicating.
Motion to adopt with agenda.
Is that assumption probably correct? Okay. So with that,
I move for your adopted agenda.
thank you with that explanation. All approve? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. We will defer until 10:45, the review of communication and management interactions. Our first topic for today's August survey would focus on the celebration news. I've prepared a draft that I've circulated to the board. Basically, a couple of broad questions about the celebration news being adopted to a different format. Here's the thrust of the way I've worded the questions. First of all, assuming no change of costs, asking our community, what do they prefer, a current print version or a magazine version? And it's on a 5-point scale. If you scroll down, Steve, it's a 5-point scale. What do you prefer, newspaper version, definitely keep it, or magazine? Then the same question with a different assumption, and that's that there's a cost difference. And the cost difference, the way I've worded it, is initial calculations making this, conversation is supposed to be conversion, result in a net cost to the CROA annual budget of about $20,000. Brian, is that correct? It's about 20 after the CJC piece?
Yeah, I think I would probably feel more comfortable using a range.
Okay, that's fine.
I think we should say 20 to 30.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, you could always have more marketing, you could have less of this, more of this, so it's not quite that precise.
So thank you. So what I've done is also calculated it per home to bring it down, and then to see if the responses to that are any different. That's an easy comparison, at least to prepare. And so the question is, does that plus the follow-on items or things that we've heard, like how important are these various items, is that going to give the board the information that it needs to make an informed decision?
Staffing changes. Would we need to replace Mary? Do we need someone to do the ads? Do we need to look at possible staffing changes?
Is that a question for a survey? No, I mean,
as far as if you're looking at expenses.
But it was part of the incremental cost difference.
That's part of our discussion, but it's not part of a survey, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think.
Okay.
I think that would be one variable of the multiple variables involved in that format switch, and we don't really label everything in this survey.
Okay, yeah, that would be for a format.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it appropriate for questions from the audience?
I can't.
Is it appropriate for questions from the audience or no?
As long as we're, first of all, let's see if there's other questions from the board, and then yes, but it's all about the survey.
Right, I understand.
It's all about the survey.
Do we, I think part of what Debbie's asking, and it's the same question I've got, is when we talk about this costing more, I'd like it to be clear that the primary reason for that cost is that we are expanding personnel staff more than, that's not right?
No.
The primary reason for it is the cost of newsprint?
No, just as a refresher here.
Just in the
It is
magazine.
more expensive to go to the magazine.
That's right, that's right.
Because you're not getting the marketing revenue.
Right, okay,
So
I'm
if, I mean,
Got it.
so the reason I said 20 to 30,000 is we had the incremental cost in there. I think what meaning if we're going to hire a full-time marketing person and keep the graphics design person, great. But we can't revisit this issue in 6 months. So we either need to be a newspaper town or we need to be a magazine town. What we've tried to do in here is be very fair. It's the same content. I've seen the back porch vote, which probably was 125 to 5, but we'd like to get the whole thing. And is the community really at 650? I think we ought to just have one question on the survey. So that way people don't get confused. They deal with the one question. Is the community really divided 50-50? Is it really 125 to 5 and everybody else doesn't care? Or is it 550 to 125? And then we can make decisions. It is.
Yeah, and to just follow up on that, the reason I had it flipped in my mind was that I'm thinking one step ahead to, if we are in a newspaper format, what does it do to our staffing? You've already calculated that in when you come to the magazine cost.
No.
Yes, we have.
You have.
The staffing cost was all in that worksheet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
my ultimate point is, to Brian's point, I think one question would be helpful. I would like to have a paragraph of explanation so that people understand what we're having trouble understanding. That we have done a calculation of the net costs of these two alternatives, that with the changes in staffing that would be required to keep it in-house, the magazine still comes out at this range of $20,000 to $30,000.
Okay,
Is
so
that
then what I
reasonable?
would do is on item 3, can you bounce up to item 3 there, Steve? What I would do, and we could do it with probably a couple of sentences right before they're saying, we factored in the full things. There's more marketing revenue, which we retain under this one scenario, but
Yeah.
there's additional headcount in that under this other scenario.
Right,
We need to
that's-
make a decision that's going to be with us for 5 years or more. And, at the end of the day, it is more expensive to have the magazine probably in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $30,000.
That's what I'd like to say.
It could be a home run in a year when you get more marketing. We have a recession. You get less marketing. It's
Okay, so the sense there, there is some background provided.
Yeah.
Expanding that, eliminating what is currently question 2.
Yeah.
So not making that distinction of, okay, putting all the facts out front and saying, what do you think?
I could write a sentence or two.
That'd be helpful.
I'll do that.
Then do you like the piece of, I remember Jack talking last time, it's important for people to actually see what a magazine might look like. Is that important to have? Do we want to have
It's going to be available, right?
We are going to have a sample. It won't be of the exact same quality of what you're getting with the contract, but there will be one that gives you an idea of what it looks like.
So one thing that I do have a concern with that, has this company, P2O, have they created something to the quality that they're selling us? I don't want to go ahead and go 100% on their word and say, hey, this is going to be what you get, but you're going to get it better, and it's going to be the best thing we've ever made.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that they're true to their word on that.
Yeah, but you're asking them also to put thousands of dollars into something to make it exactly the way that it's going to be made when it's in the contract. It's very doable from their world of how they're saying that they can make it.
Right, and it may not be creating the actual magazine, but if they turn around and say, all right, this is the material that we use for the cover, so it's going to be a little more sturdy than this flimsy cover, just provide that sheet.
That's what we need to know.
It wouldn't be any different than any other kind of a...
Right.
This is, I think it's a 3-year contract. It comes out to almost $1 million over 3 years is what they're looking at. It's not, something to laugh at.
But we have a copy of a magazine that has the same quality that we're going to get. It's just not it's not taking the Celebration newspaper and turning it.
That's fine. That's fine.
No, we don't.
It's a matter of what the the look and feel.
Right.
It's a look and feel.
And I think we have a copy of something like that we can check.
Okay. All right. So we will do that. Have you had a chance to review the sample? Okay. And then we'll eliminate that first cut. How about the other elements? Your response on the following: high quality. I like to see. I prefer the touch and feel. Do we want that? Does that help? The question is, does it help us as a board?
Personally, I don't think it's very helpful. I'm not sure too many people are going to say that they strongly do not want a high-quality publication. That doesn't strike me as a response we're going to get.
Okay.
I think the real question that we want to be clear about is what people want, and then it's up to us to make the decision about whether or not it's a wise fiduciary decision. I'm not trying to defer this decision onto the community. I think we said early on that we wanted to be able to make smart decisions, but I'm not sure that the information here would help guide my vote in any particular way.
Yeah, I would actually echo that, because I would like to see what the community says, without a doubt.
Okay.
But I would make sure that the community is aware that it is going to be outsourced. And I don't know if that's, if that paragraph gets drafted. If we go to magazine, I just want it to be very clear that this is an outsource.
Well, I think clear that two components of this will be outsourced, because a majority of the newspaper is outsourced as it is, and we're not printing in-house.
Or a better way to describe it is explain how the newspaper currently is in-house. This is more of a decision than just the media that we're delivering. It's the contract that's behind it. Me personally, I'm indifferent. Honestly, I'm indifferent on the media. I just want to make sure that we don't sign ourselves up for something that's going to, come back to us.
And then there's the issue: what happens in 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll make it simpler.
Well, that's just my view. I don't know what
Others? Do the other elements help or not? Do they help us make a decision? That's where we're moving. What's going to help? This is the missing piece for making a decision.
I think feedback's always a gift, so information is great to have. Are the responses only going to be, similar to the election or anything else? What percentage are we actually going to get?
We'll get 800 to 1,000, as we have for the last 5 surveys.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to make an example here, the very last question in this grouping was, I prefer to have the publication prepared by local personnel, staff members. A certain amount of this is a proxy fight over 1 or 2 jobs. And I don't know that most people answering this question will understand that that's the subtext to this. So therefore, it's really not appropriate. If we're going to have that fight, let's just have that fight. Let's get up here and call it what it is. If we're not going to be willing to have that fight, then let's not play games with the community and put questions in that suggest it. And if you're in the inside and you say, oh, that's what it is. And if you're not, you're like, what are they talking about?
I think it's a little bit misleading to the way it's worded, because it's not entirely done in-house. There are pieces of it that are outsourced.
Exactly. I mean, I appreciate the spirit in which you ask these questions, but I think that they will give us more disinformation in some respects than information.
Okay. So we'll thin that down, or take those out. That our sense? Have the 2 questions. Did you review the sample and then the 1-5 part? Is that okay? Is that where we are? And then open comments. Leave open comments. Okay, some other follow-on that I wrote to the board about. Would you want any other topic in the survey? And what I have as a placeholder is just overall suggestions or comments.
That's fine.
I would prefer that we not have anything else, and that we focus on getting the survey out as soon as possible.
Okay.
So that we just get the feedback and we can move on. We've got budget season coming.
So where we have been in the past is a quarterly survey. That would have been August. Do we care about that, or just go ahead and do this and we'll call it the summer survey? In other words, hit into July?
I wouldn't say that I don't care about it, but I think this is #1 priority right now.
Okay, so let's move this.
I would prefer get it out in July, just call it our 3rd quarter survey. And be done, get our answer,
do our
make our budget.
Do our 3 weeks, and then we don't have to worry about the timetable. We'll have plenty for the August board meeting.
Yeah, I would
support. Is that okay? Is that where we are? Okay. Comment to the microphone, please. And then,
mouth is big enough?
Camera still won't pick it up.
We want your picture on TV.
managing our time, we have 4 more topics in 1 hour.
And absolutely. But my original comment was going to be that I think that you need to, people don't read. You know, maybe they read the first couple lines and then they're done. My suggestion would be to lay it out in bullet points rather than a narrative and say, you know, fact. The Celebration News, as it is, makes on average $35,000 of revenue a year. Fact. If we go with the magazine, you know, it will cost us $2,700 a year. And then just, you know, everything, so it's all laid out like that. Because I know how folks are, even the stuff that was written on the back, written at social media. People were asking the same question, well, but does it make us money? Well, yeah, read what was written in the first paragraph. I think you need to make it very easy for people to see exactly what the issues are. I would also put in there that this is a CROA board initiative, because there's some people in town that have the wrong impression of where this idea is coming from, that I'm getting just from social media. The other thing that I think would be helpful would be your questions at the bottom. You know, then it would be all things being equal, you know, which do you prefer, blah, blah. And then items like, you know, what would you like to see in the Celebration News? More about people in town. And I apologize, I don't have my reading.
And actually, we have that from last fall survey.
Yeah.
We've already had that data.
More,
we have that.
Whatever. I did last month's survey.
We have that from
I don't
November.
remember that. But anyway, I would encourage that, especially since that they're going to put stuff, a filler in, if they don't have 55% stuff from us, they're going to put in their own articles. You know, I think there's lots of ways we can fill that space with stuff that's pertinent to us.
We'll have it filled. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
A couple other quick comments, and then we're going to move on.
Barbara Church. Frankly, I'm more concerned about content than format. And everyone that we have talked to has said the same thing about the current format with the Celebration News and any magazine format that you may come up with. So you may want to add an additional question on your survey about that and the possibility of making it more substantive about the real things that are going on in town that would be of interest to the homeowners. At first, when I heard the proposal about the magazine, I was hesitant because I like the Celebration News. But since then, Artisan Park has implemented a magazine format. It's online, and it's very sharp and sleek, and I like it. And I'm Miss Communications, just ask them and they'll tell you. So I'm not going to oppose the magazine format at all, but I'm more interested, as I say, in the content, that it's more substantive. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. I'd like to agree with Barbara that it's the important thing here is about content. I'm on the Special Events Committee, and we can come in and ask for a bigger budget for special events, but if we don't get that information that something is happening out to the community, you know, then we're just throwing money away. I have some concerns. One, that just the way the question has been asked on the front porch or the back porch, and even the way it's here, is that it's really not neutral. The knee-jerk reaction is what you have or something you've never seen, you're going to go with, yeah, what we have is not bad, I'm going with that. I also have some very deep concerns about, after listening to Kathy Carlson speak, that the revenue that supports our newspaper is really based to a large extent by realtors who in many ways are starting to use other methods of advertising. So I'd like to see a question that says, if we, you know, you could say, at the moment, it's the numbers say that we would get an additional $20,000 if we stayed with the newspaper. However, in the future, we don't really know what it is. The magazine can basically use nationwide advertising. We're here with local advertising, and again, a lot of it is real estate, and real estate is very much going online or to other sources. So I think we need a little more sort of neutral, like, this is the way it is at the moment. However, if they were the same, which would you prefer? Or if the magazine was the, financially better for this community, which one would you prefer?
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion from the board? We'll circulate a new draft.
I'm sure whatever we do, it'll be wrong.
This is going to be one of those topics.
I think the prior sense of the board and what I'm hearing now is simpler is better. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the questions about content, those are all valid. I think the first step in all of this is to figure out format and funding, then start to work down into the content questions. I think they're valid to ask, what are we doing with the publication in whatever format it's in?
Right.
But I'm concerned that we not confuse. I mean, you're the survey experts, but it seems to me that when you keep one survey to one topic, you're going to get a better response than when you broaden it. Is that accurate?
And it seems to me that 9 months after asking the questions of what should the content be, to ask again, the response would be, you just asked me this.
Yeah.
So we have very rich data that's only 9 months old. It's last November. I think this is a separate discussion than content. All right, can we move on to budget planning? This was an item, simply budget planning follow-up, because we had a 3-hour workshop on budget planning. So it was just, what needs do we have now? What are follow-on issues? I know that you're working to create a budget, and you can remind us on what the timeline is. What?
I'm sitting too far away to see what he's writing to me. I do have one or two items.
Please.
I had the opportunity to meet with Steve one-on-one to ask some additional questions about budget. The primary area of my concern was that our payroll expense represents about 31% of our overall budget, which is the highest single item, which I think is probably right. We don't know yet if that metric is a reasonable metric, too high, too low, just about right. We are going to talk about a management audit in a moment. But one of the things that I think is clear is that we as a board, at least the 4 new members, are still trying to get our hands around all of the different job responsibilities, the amount that gets allocated for them, whether or not we are staffing to the level of service, as Steve has been talking about. Are we at the level of service that we want and need, and what does it take to get there? And it also seems to me that we have not yet as a board had a chance to weigh in on our reactions and input as to personnel and areas of efficiency, things that are being done well, things that could be improved upon, that if I were in Steve's position, I think I'd want to have that input. So one of the things that I would like to do is to formally request that we schedule an executive session of the board to go into meeting with Steve, and I see Joe Cook is here today, if Joe would like to be part of that conversation as well, to talk through and give our feedback on some of these personnel matters and to dig in a little bit deeper. I recognize I need a second board member to join me in that request for an executive session, so I'm hoping that someone will do that. But I think that's the next responsible step to take before we get to the final budget presentations.
If that's a motion, I will second that. And I think it goes off of what we talked about originally about the budget, and that's the way I work for myself is I look at every penny, every dollar, and I'd like to just get a full understanding instead of just a budget line. So it wouldn't be exclusive to that. We need an executive session for that, but I still want to make sure that we can get everything fully comprehended. So I'll second that.
So the executive session can cover the personnel. I do not believe it can cover the budget.
No, I know.
Okay.
That's my reasoning why.
That's fine. Just to separate
By
that.
executive session, do you mean with outside counsel so that it's private, or what are...
No, we don't need outside counsel if we're discussing personnel.
Right.
Discussion of
At least that's my
personnel or legal with outside counsel, then that would be the two areas we.
Those are the two criteria for executive session.
And I don't see a reason for outside counsel here. This is not
I'm trying to
adversarial in
understand
any
the
way.
way. I
This is-
forgot about the personnel part, okay.
Yeah. Those are the two.
And to be clear, this is not at least in my mind, this is not a bitch and gripe session. This is how do we provide constructive feedback on the workings of our management company. I think we all remember the org chart that Steve showed us at various points along the way, in which, at least for me, my eyes glazed over, and I said, oh my God, who's getting paid what, from where, doing what, for whom? And a lot of those details are in the red binder that was prepared for us, and the job justifications and descriptions. And I think it would be very helpful to now go back through those, talking about the individuals in those positions and whether or not we're well suited. At the end of the day, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, is that we will give management a percentage amount, a dollar amount, and say, this is what you've got for payroll. And then you would allocate that to your staff as you see appropriate. Is that?
I think that's certainly one way to look at it. The other way is as you go through and you approve the overall budget, like we've started this conversation at the beginning of July, looking at level of service, looking at determining what services you want to provide to the community, and then what are your results that you're getting from those services. Are the different areas, the special events, the maintenance and operations, the collections, the community standards, are we meeting the results and the expectations that this community is looking for? And I think that that's a better way for us to focus our time and energy, because that's ultimately what you have me here for, is to determine, do I have the right people in the right positions to get you those results that you're looking for. The minute you're not getting those results, you're having that conversation with me to say, why isn't this happening? And then I'm here to figure that out and get that fixed.
So you would not want us to have this meeting?
I think that if we're talking about results and we're talking about specific areas where we're lacking, and that comes down to personnel, then I think that that's an appropriate conversation. If we're going to go through and talk about personalities of who you like and who you don't like, I don't think we're going to be very productive. We're not going to get anywhere.
Do you hear anything I'm saying that suggests that this is about personalities?
No.
Okay.
I think that we're probably saying the same thing.
Okay.
It gets us to what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
I guess how I would think about it is it probably would be worthwhile to have a meeting, because I'd rather the budget process be smooth and streamlined. And if we can have one painful executive session versus convoluted board meetings, it'll be better for the community. The danger is, in my previous corporate life, there were thousands of employees, and you could like Joe and hate Sue, or vice versa, but at the end of the day, that was based upon how they played with the CFO. Nice or not nice. That's not how we should make decisions. It's good to know who does what functions to better put faces to the org charts, which we got at our very first meeting, and we were a lot better educated. But where I'd really like us to get is, okay, here is the group of players, here's the services provided, does it work, yes or no? At the end of the day, we shouldn't get down to things like who gets a raise, who doesn't get a raise, and stuff like that. At the end of the day, CCMC is the management company. We got to trust them and do a good job. I like the idea of a meeting where we can give Steve feedback and say, hey, based upon 6 months, let's assume this happens in August, let's say, or September, okay, here's our feedback at this point in the game. But then it allows, if we can do this once and then go smoother with the budget process, that probably makes it okay in my mind.
And then I think the second half to that, Kevin's comment on wanting to know every dollar, every line, we're going to get very detailed. And when I start talking about the timeline, I'll talk to you about those dates that we're going to do that. But you're going to have every opportunity to see every dollar and every line.
Exactly. And that's my reason why I'm okay with this executive session, is because that every dollar cannot be discussed at that point. Right. I don't want to go ahead and necessarily give feedback. I don't think that's my position. It will help me understand 100% of the budget.
Yep, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and so what I think this executive session does is helps us gain some greater depth of understanding of personnel without getting into the weeds, but get the, help, some understanding, and then some feedback that then goes back to you. And I think, yeah, you are the lead of the management at the local level. You're the lead of the management company that we've hired to do this.
Well, my title's on the contract. I'm the one position that you all can decide at any point in time that you'd like to replace.
But that then feeds into our budget discussion. So we want it in a timely way that's helpful in that regard.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the executive session, I know we can do legal personnel, but isn't it normally a specific personnel issue? It's not just general personnel, this is what they do, and this is a dollar amount. I mean, I think we're getting into a possible violation of 720, and I just want to make sure we're careful on that.
Again, we cannot interpret law, but what we've been explained in the past is when it's discussion of personnel, so you may get into a little bit more detailed discussion on individuals when we're talking about job titles and job positions. So I think that's an appropriate use of the executive session. If you just wanted to have just a general overview of the org chart and who's doing what, then I would say make that out in the open. But if you want to get any more detailed, any more specific, I'd ask to do it in an executive session.
I would find it very hard to believe that we could get detailed with more than a half a dozen people. I mean, who do we really know and deal with?
Right.
Going back to Jackson's comment about 31%, I mean, I was in an industry where personnel and personnel-related costs were about 70%. So I think really it's our biggest expense when you look at any one particular category, but it's not, to me, it's really, as an industry, it's what is the right number for that industry that matters.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a management audit to help us figure that out. The reality is that no one sitting at this room, at this table right now, could say with absolute certainty that that number is too high or too low or just right. It is a metric, and we should have some additional metrics to compare with. But because it's 31% of our budget, I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're spending as much time and energy on that one line item as we do on line items that comprise 1 or 2% of our overall budget. And I want to do that in the right way. Now, if, to Debbie's concern, if you really feel that this is not appropriate, I have no problem with requesting from Tom Slayton a quick letter of instruction as to whether or not we can do this. I don't think that's a problem at all, and I think he could probably produce that in a short time.
It's personnel. I just want to make sure we're not, using it the wrong way.
Well, I have no desire to use this for anything other than what I've just described here. That's why I'm asking the questions and trying to clarify with Steve, so that it's entirely clear what we would be doing.
Okay. We'll go with it then.
Okay, so two issues here. We have a motion on the table about it, and you second it. Are we at closure on that?
You got a comment from the audience out there too.
Yes. Please.
Gary Hutchpeth. Bouncing off what Brian said, I was a defense contractor in the consulting business after my military career. Our services were 95% of our cost, and you paid for expertise, our knowledge, our background, and our thinking ability to provide that services. We didn't produce anything. We didn't mow the grass. We didn't build anything. We didn't construct anything. We provided mental services. The other 5% was travel expenses when we have to go somewhere. So to me, to say that 31% is of your budget for celebration is good or bad, it is what it is. Two facts: you've already signed and have an approved contract with the management company, so it's kind of a done deal. The percentage is a factor of what else do you do in this community. You can hire more people to, I apologize, I didn't mean to say that. You can create more things to do in this community. That's the product side of having more events, of mowing more grass, of planting more plants, and then your management contract fee will, percentage-wise, will go down because you're planting more plants, you're mowing more grass, you're trimming more trees. So it's all a factor of what you do in this community. How many special events do you have? And that's my point, is you can discuss this till the cows come home, but it is what it is.
But we have, I think we're confusing numbers. I want to clarify your number of 31%. The way I heard you say it is 31% of our budget is personnel.
That's correct. Yeah, it's $1.3 million.
And what Gary is referring to is the 31%, or what's the percentage of the load rate? Is it 31% also?
The load burden.
The burden rate.
The burden is different.
That is very confusing because they're similar. They're right there.
Because they're the same, and those are two different 31%.
Right.
Like we have.
I made the same mistake when Jackson and I were talking. I was thinking under that mindset.
It's not the burden rate. We're talking about the personnel costs.
Right. If we want to have, I mean, a quick example is if we wanted to have more events and we wanted to have an assistant to the events, an assistant to the events director, because I think there is one already, then we would increase the budget for personnel in order to reflect that. That would ultimately raise the dollars going in. And I think that's part of what we have to try and do. I would just say that for us, as particularly, I'll just speak for me because these guys, the other three new board members, are way smarter than I am. But this process is mind-numbingly difficult. It is complexity on top of complexity on top of complexity, followed by some lack of transparency historically in this community that has been changed over the last few years. As a result, when you are trying to do a professional, responsible job, a fiduciary job of understanding these numbers, it is really challenging, at least for me. So I've spent a fair amount of time talking to people in the community, talking to prior board members, talking to current board members, just trying to understand what all these numbers mean. And everyone has been very helpful. Steve has spent a couple of hours with me and other board members just walking through this stuff. But anybody that thinks you can walk in, step up to this stuff, and immediately, other than Brian Hansel, and understand this stuff, you're delusional. It doesn't happen that way. And so I want to just do the digging now when we've got an opportunity to make a difference and ask the questions. It does not come with an agenda to torch CCMC or do anything of the sort. It's just trying to understand what we're doing and I'm just doing it the best we can.
Okay. So with the motion on the table, do we want to close that down?
I have one other comment to make, not specifically to the executive session, but when it comes to the budget planning as a whole, CJC, we are essentially keeping that in mind with our budget. That is 75-25 contribution, correct? 75 CROA, 25 Canola. This is not to blindside anybody. I just came across something this weekend, and I'm hopeful we can kind of understand. Was it always that way? I came across a document that actually shows the numbers were different, and I'm curious when that change happened. I actually believe it was before you as well, Steve. So
it was many years ago. It was probably before most of us.
2011.
I think the cost sharing agreement was 2001.
The original one, yes.
The
and
75-25.
Documents they're not on the website, which I know is something that we're working on, but I do my own digging through that as well to see what the documents were. But it used to actually be 1/3 Canoa and 2/3 CROA, which 66% compared to 75% is a big chunk when we're looking at the administration and so on. So I'm curious what caused that change. Is that a change that is something we need to look into again? Was the commercial, components of the community a lot less than they are, than residential was, and that's why we made the adjustment? Because now we're actually looking back to probably how that used to be. So I'd just like to keep that in mind when we're looking at the budget to make sure it truly.
Close down the motion for executive session. Any further discussion on that?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then any further discussion on budget, so we can...
Yes, just to go down the timeline very quickly.
Yeah, please.
This is the week the books were closed for June, so I'll begin this week polling worksheets. In fact, tomorrow we'll be hibernating because it's a lot of polling and moving Excel and getting it the way it needs to look for the department heads to start building their budgets. Then they'll come back and meet with myself and Susan. We'll review them, we'll vet them, we'll ask all the questions that we anticipate you all asking to make sure that we've kind of talked through a true zero-based budget. This is what it's going to cost to run the association. And then I have to spend a little bit more time finalizing the budget, putting it all together, making sure all the numbers work so that you get a balanced budget under the guiding principles of trying to keep it at 930.72 and if needed, just a slight increase. So that was the direction that I received at the July 2nd meeting. We would like to propose to you today to have your consensus budget meeting, which would be an all-day meeting on Monday, September 10th. That's your first CROA workshop in September. If we feel like that's an appropriate time, we'd like to utilize that. If you think there's too many other agenda items to discuss that day and you'd like to do a separate day, then we'll have to find another day to get everybody back together and do a full day. What we see happening in that meeting is you giving us any direction on numbers that need to be adjusted, things that need to be changed, and then taking the time to go back and rework that. The next workshop after that is October 1st, if needed. If we need to try and do something before that, we can try and get it scheduled within the month of September. But the goal here is to have the proposed budget letter out to residents at the beginning of October, and then have the budget adopted at the CROA board meeting on October 24th. That gives us appropriate amount of time to send out all the budget postcards to residents and get the inserts ready to go for January.
Keeps us on schedule.
Mm-hmm. We got a little bit behind schedule last year by moving so late into November. If we can keep it in October, that would be a little bit more beneficial for the community.
So just to clarify, you're asking for an all-day meeting on Monday, September 10th?
Correct. It's already scheduled to have a 9:30 to 11:30. We'd just like to extend that and have an all-day work session. We'll bring you some lunch.
So rather than just a 2-hour workshop, it's an all-day workshop.
And then what's our next scheduled meeting date in September?
24th?
17th.
Well, the 17th, you were doing your board meeting
That's what I
in
thought,
September,
yeah.
so we've modified that month just a little bit.
So we are doing our nighttime board meeting on the 17th?
Correct.
Oh, yeah, regular meeting.
Okay.
For the first budget you do, I'd really like to stay to the 930-72. If we need to use surplus to balance it, let's do that. I'd rather, I don't want an artificial increase without our input.
Sure.
When do I see the budget?
Well, typically you've seen it, or the treasurer's seen it that day that we do the consensus, but we can always modify that, change it. You can come sit with me as I start really putting it all together, and I can show you how that works. And it's fully transparent. I have no problem with working with you throughout the process.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
So then scheduling this executive session that would precede that September.
Yeah, I would.
So that could be one of the 2 board workshops in August, either the 6th or the 20th?
Well, I'd like to make sure that we have as many board members as possible who are available.
Right. Right.
How about after we're done with the meeting, I'll do an all-board email and figure out which one makes the most sense.
One of those 2.
Okay. And then my other question, just to make sure I understand this timing, Steve, if we do the all-day budget workshop on the 10th, that provides enough time to take that information, digest it, work on it, create it, and then come back on the 17th? Are we going to be asked to do anything on that board meeting with regard to the budget? Is it off the, there's no action items?
No, the first time we think that we can bring it for you to vote for approval would be October 24th.
Okay.
October 24th.
Okay.
So 6 weeks.
So our plan then, just to be clear, is that we will not see any action items on the September 17th board packet relative to the budget.
It would be a miracle if the budget and I got consensus on every single item for you to approve it on the 17th. And there's no reason for you to have to approve it the 17th.
There's no chance of September 17th.
Right.
Let's just be honest.
Board packet gets delivered and publicized almost a week ahead of time. So that's the next day.
Okay.
I think
That's September 11th.
Okay.
That's not going to
It would
happen.
be great if we could target August 20th for the executive session, because August 22nd is the CROA board meeting, so people will probably, even if they're out of town traveling, be back in town, because we'll have 2 meetings bang bang.
Okay.
Will the September 10th meeting be completely televised? That's a holy day for me, and I won't be able to be here.
We can. The boards in the past have said televise everything but the budget work sessions, but we certainly can have it available. Now, we're probably going to have to take a break to do some transition of memory cards and those types of things, but we can make it work.
I think also the boards in the past have not had workshops televised.
No, that's what I'm saying. They've never...
In the past.
Right.
Have been live stream.
But I know budget work sessions have, since I've been here, have never been on camera.
I don't have any issues with it being on camera.
Are there any staff members who, because of the holidays, I didn't realize it was on the 10th. Is there anyone that would not be able to attend that you need to be here?
Not that I know of, no. It's not a nationally recognized holiday for us.
If we need to look at another day.
Can we look
I'm
at
sorry, as
September
far as day
11th?
off.
Can we look at September 11th, September 12th?
Is September 11th work? Yes. I mean, I don't have problems.
I don't have
doing
an
it one
issue.
day.
Anyone have an issue with September 11th? It would be a matter of reposting on the website.
I think that's fair because we did, I mean, I know Labor Day the week before is a national holiday, and we move things around for that, and I
Let's
think
do
it's
it.
only fair and appropriate.
Any issues? September 11th?
That works for me.
The only thing I need to check is to make sure that Lifelong doesn't already have something scheduled that day. I know that they've worked their schedule around your workshops.
Okay.
So we'd have to check and see if there's a
That's right.
lifelong learning.
And we have 2 board members that we want to make sure that everybody's here for that as well.
Find out.
Yeah, so we're,
That's tentative.
we'll do
One way or
some,
the other, we'll make it work.
we'll make that work. Okay, anything else under budget? Any other feedback going into that? Okay, thank you for the update. Planning for town hall, we have 30 minutes. Planning for town hall sessions? Any thoughts? Any? So the question was, back when we formed as a board and built our strategic plan, one of the things that we talked about for further engaging the community was having town hall sessions. Now, since that idea back in March, we have more workshops. We've altered the style of workshops. We've had more communication in the Celebration News and more coming with, for example, the discussions we've had with Mattamy. There'll be a special article, the first of several special articles starting in August with Island Village. So the idea was having an open town hall meeting a la we did with Mattamy and Island Village in this room, March, I think. Right. So what's the thinking? We had it on the agenda to talk about what do we want to do?
I originally proposed or brought up the discussion of town hall, and from that time, we've actually, with your assistance, we've changed the way that the workshops function, and they are now more of a discussion with the community. Was with the goal to streamline the board meetings and make those quicker, which we still are going to continue working on.
Okay, I get it.
However, for the workshops, I think opening up dialogue with the community and not limiting somebody to 3 minutes has really kind of, my personal opinion, helped. It's definitely that we're welcoming feedback at all times when something is relevant, and not in the beginning, and then it gets lost when we're discussing that topic. So that works. I think about 2 months ago in May, we said we might try to get a town hall going with Mattamy. That was brought up, and we would reach out to them to get progress. I don't know if they have progress to share yet, so that would be the next
Not worthy of a town hall. Not worthy of a town hall.
Community
That'd be fair.
That might get attendance.
If I can follow on what you said, having doing 2 workshops a month and a board meeting a month and seeing many familiar faces in the audience, when Cindy and Tim brought up the magazine versus newspaper thing, I learned a lot. I learned that when we think we're communicating, maybe we're not, especially on a workshop and board basis. There is a core group of 30 people and 40 people in the community who stay very involved, catch us all. Great for them. I think, and I've talked with David about this a couple times, that we need to do a much better job of content in whether it's a newspaper or the magazine. And for instance, we're doing an article on Mattamy. We're laying it all out there. And then we talked about the athletic fields. So, in the next one, we're going to have a separate from the board thing, an article on the athletic fields. And to me, if we had to get to the point where we had the standard board one in 2 separate articles, I'd rather do that, because I think the chances of somebody reading the newspaper or the magazine and responding helps us. Backboards, but one of them is, okay, these seem to be places where people are thinking and caring. And I'm trying, what I care about most with our communication is that we actually get facts out there, try to cut out the BS, and by BS I mean when people just start making up their own set of facts. And if we have something in writing, I think Kevin has done a very good job of responding to people's emails as secretary. But if Kevin can point to this article was published in the newspaper, magazine, and they're online too, and you can go look there and you can see the facts as we best have them, And, you know, we're learning each other's communication styles, but I'm very hit the nail on the head, just put all the facts out there. And I like that approach versus another meeting where the same 30 people show up. 'Cause, you know, there are people out in this audience who catch me when I'm walking the streets, and I'm sure the rest of you too, and say, this is what I think. That's great. To hit the other 10,000 people in town, I think that's the best way to do it, probably.
I would agree. I think, like you were saying, with Town Hall, I was looking for engagement, and we've adjusted these meetings that we've had so far to increase engagement with the community. We can't make you come here, but when you do come here, we want to hear you.
Dave, can I add one more item to that too? I think along the lines of what Brian was saying, you know, the newspaper articles and having more substance to them are another way of reaching residents.
Right.
I think when you initially had this concept of a town hall meeting, it was probably going to be for the bigger, larger, more sexy items per se in town, and you really haven't had that yet. You probably will when you start talking about the community center a little bit more. You probably will next year when you start talking about charter changes. So I wouldn't recommend completely ditching the thought of that, but again, usual familiar faces. Your workshops are at 9 o'clock in the morning. So some of the larger items are going to be probably where that town hall meeting would need to be at 6 o'clock in the evening, so that residents that can't come here in the morning have the opportunity to come to us.
We could move a workshop if it's going to be on a more informative topic to the evening too. There's no magic that says workshops have to be at 9:30.
And this isn't broken right now. This seems to be working very well. But the idea of that town hall was for those bigger, larger items where you really wanted a lot more interaction and a lot more opportunity for people to kind of share. You could pop a microphone out to the audience and some back and forth conversations. But for the items that you're working on now, the workshop format seems to be working really well.
Yeah, we should only have a town hall when there's really something of substance.
Right. So hold it for something special, or something where there's a perceived need for large group engagement.
Exactly. And when residents, like I had a resident ask me a question last week, I could easily go back and point them to the exact date and time of the video. I give them a little arrow to show them exactly how to click on it and read it. So there's plenty of opportunity for folks to get that information if they just ask.
And some of that helps to inform special articles. Mm-hmm. Again, with Island Village, our plan is to do regular updates. Again, the first one is finalized as of Friday and will be in the August Celebration News. And then Brian's idea about doing one on the recreation athletic fields. And then there may be other issues that emerge where we need a special article. And I think the articles that we've seen, thanks to Gary and the Covenants Committee, that help to inform the community about covenants and you know, our whole process there. Anything else for that? The idea is good, but we're not going to do any action at this point.
Yeah.
Mike.
Mike Jackson, 413 Sycamore. Now that you've almost talked yourself out of town halls, I'm going to throw a wrench in it. I think for a lot of the reasons Brian stated is the reason you should do a town hall. I don't think you should try to hold them just for big events. I think then you get a real choppy communication. Something comes up and you're up here, then you're down like this. I think if you create a consistent cadence of town halls, 1 or 2 a year, you may not have a lot to report, but I think rather than having 30 people in the audience, you're going to draw more people. And I think that's the way you begin the relationship and the communication and the linkage with more people in the community. So I would encourage you not to discount this, not to put it aside and say, we'll wait for a big thing, and stay committed to what you said you were going to do. Hold the town halls. I think there's plenty going on. There may not be great updates or substantive updates with a lot of facts, but I think there's a lot of things that should be communicated, and people should have the opportunity. If you don't do this, I think you're going to perpetuate what you have. With 30 people in the audience, you're going to continue doing the same thing over and over again. So you have an opportunity here to make a difference, to do something different and expect a different result. And I think you've rationalized your way out of it. And I would encourage you to rethink that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Very helpful.
You know, it sounds so much smarter coming from Mike. But, you know, when I proposed the town hall concept, it was because I wanted us to move off of the crisis mode, the emergency mode of communication. And I think we've done a pretty good job of getting better at this. We didn't do a good job, I think, with the newspaper magazine question. But in general, I think part of what we want to be doing is opening ourselves up to as many opportunities to communicate. So, for example, we're bringing together the condo board managers to talk about Comcast. It's a wonderful opportunity to start engaging that particular subset of the community, having some discussions about condos and things that are going on there. I recognize the amount of time that each of us invest as volunteers and you as staff in trying to do all of these things. I'd love to see us in a situation where individual board members or a group of 2 board members take on a particular task force or town hall and do that. We are going to talk about a management audit. It would make sense to have a town hall to say to the community, as we engage in this process or begin this process, what would you like to tell us? And it might be that it's only the same 30 people. It might be 10 people. I don't know. But if we televise it, if we stream it, if we put it out there, I think we're being true to our intent, which is to be transparent and to involve the community in a way that I don't think any survey does by itself, any more than a town hall will do it by itself.
Exactly.
So I'd like to see us take that inclusive approach where we can.
With Mike's comments and Jackson yours, how about something that draws from the past a little, which did not have high response, and that was the meet and greet? What if we had, for argument's sake, in September, we might advertise 1 or 2 topics and have a meet and greet with the board and have little snacks or whatever we had. We had some things donated, just blending that together.
To go off of that, something that just hit me as Mike was speaking and as Jackson just mentioned something. When the election process comes around, you hear a lot of what the board could be doing, what they should have been doing, what we're going to do, that kind of a thing. What about a generic, how are we doing? Your community, your voice, your board. A town hall is meant to listen and hear what's going on.
Hear what the issues are.
That might be the way to do it is, hey, it's your board. Let's hear it all. If you have a question, ask. If we can answer and we know the answer, we'll get it. If we can find the answer, whatever the case is. It might just be very generic. It might be a dud, but we don't know until we try it.
And that's the same spirit that we'll get into in 15 minutes, is how are we doing, because the dialogue here is not about the community per se. It's about how are we doing as a board, how are we doing with management, how is management, we've changed how we're operating, how does management feel about the change of operation? And so that's the dialogue among us. And so do the same process with the community. You know, we're here to serve you as a community. How is that working for you with what we're doing? So that can be a talent.
The value of what Kevin's suggesting versus the old traditional meet and greets was when someone had a conversation with you, not everybody heard their conversation with you. So if you had something like that, it would give the audience an opportunity to hear. You're probably going to have some complaint sessions, but you're going to have some good information come out of that also.
Might work. That might work.
Should we give it a try?
Cindy has a comment. Do you want to come up?
Just real quick. If you have it on a weekday morning or a weekday evening, you know, most people work, if you look in the audience, other than the staff here, we're all retired. We can come whenever. But if it's during the day, people are at work. If it's at night, they have issues with the kids. When we had the initial Parks and Recreation thing, we did it on a Saturday. I think it started maybe 10:30. We had a light lunch. It continued after then. That's when I would have it, on a Saturday. Because then you don't get the, sure, they have meetings, but I can't go because I work.
I think the problem with that, though, is that the families, the people that you're talking about impacting are still busy on Saturdays, they're still busy on Sundays, they're out participating in the leagues and those types of things. So
well, that's why you stream it and you workshop it that way. I would just ask, David, if you would appoint a board member to coordinate with management and put together a proposed set of town hall meetings that this board could vote on.
Okay. You want an appointment now?
I'm not asking for the appointment, I'm just asking that you appoint someone.
Happy to. I'll dialogue with a person before I appoint him or her. Can we move on? One last item? And if we have time, we'll deal with the remaining item. Actually, let's leave it.
Two more items.
I know there's two, but we have time for one. so we can get into our discussion.
Oh, okay.
So which would you like to deal with as a board for 15 minutes? The garage apartment recreation fee policy or condo association management issues?
David, we could probably do both, because I can give you a real quick update on the garage one. And I think you need some more information before you can continue that conversation. The question is with legal. I asked them to respond again last week, so I will check my list of emails today and see if I've gotten a response.
So we don't have a response?
I don't have a response
about
yet.
Whether it is
and the reason why that question is coming up is because the way that the governing documents are written, the homes are described as a unit, and a single-family home unit includes their garage apartment. So the argument that's being made is that they're already paying their $930.72 annually for that one unit. And someone that lives in an apartment is not paying anything at all from a recreation fee. The apartment complex is, and that covers that, but that's the difference in the single-family unit. So that's where we're asking for a legal opinion.
We could probably just get a consensus and put it to bed, because I think it would require a charter change.
Yeah, I mean, I could share where I came from on this. Number one, I just want to put this out there. This is not going to be a popular topic whatsoever. But I am going to say that workshops are brainstorms, and brainstorms is what helps us continue progress in the community. What I was looking at is when you go ahead, if we go ahead and do a quick overview of how this is and how it works, you can go ahead and have an apartment complex and you can have a condo. You can have a conversion happen. When an apartment complex becomes a condo, the only difference that that community essentially receives is a vote for their board, and they're now an owner and a member. But on the recreation, when we look at per unit, I'm not looking at the complex, I'm looking at per unit. When you base how it works, you have two people that live in a unit, they are part of the community, they are using the amenities, it is being shared. Now, again, we're looking at budget, you can only increase so much, you can decrease so much, how do you make it work? So if you go ahead and you look at a single-family home that has an apartment that's being rented for revenue, I'm not saying just because you have an apartment on your structure, it's different. I'm saying because you're receiving a revenue and you have a business on your parcel, and your neighbor who does not have a garage apartment or has one that they do not rent, you are now having a larger demand coming from one parcel, but being divided between the neighbor that's not in that business of renting. This may go not even into a fee, but it may require, hey, if you have a garage apartment, you must have enough off-street parking to do it. You must have a second trash can that has to be paid to the trash because there is more trash coming from that parcel. This is a brainstorm to see what is the fairest operation when somebody has a garage apartment compared to somebody that doesn't. And it's not, I'll disclose, I do not have one. I intend to build one. That may be 5 years before I have it. I have a single family home without a garage apartment. I have a condo that used to be an apartment that now is paying the full apartment fee, the full condo fee rather. And then I also have family with a single family house without a garage apartment as well. So I will disclose that right off the bat and let everybody know where I stand. But I do think it's something that needs to be looked into, especially when a budget topic comes up. And what is the cost behind something, and is it properly distributed? That's where
I don't think there's a debate yet about the merits. I think the point that we're talking about here is that procedurally, we don't know yet, A, do we have the ability to make this change? B, if we do, does it require a charter change? I would love to get to the merits, but I'd rather hear from council first as to what our limitations are. So I would ask that we defer this discussion until we get that information, and then we can go to have the merits.
I don't think the community has heard, apart from just seeing the words on the agenda, what that meant.
I agree.
And that's why I wanted to share that.
And I just want to clarify one thing, and I'm pretty sure this is what Kevin meant, but there's no separate condo fee that anyone's paying. It is the CROA fee. So if you own a condo, you pay the annual assessment fee, just like a single-family home does.
Okay.
Thanks.
In the current 10 minutes, condo association management issues.
I've got a couple of them that I want to just bring everybody up to date on. One is that we have, Steve has finally managed to reach the Comcast folks to set up a discussion with condo boards, managers, and others. And that meeting is set for August 6th, I believe. August 9th, okay. It's somewhere in August. There's been a lot of confusion about this meeting. In any event, it's going to happen, and we have sent invitations out to the condo boards and directors, inviting them. What's the date?
August 7th.
August 7th.
August 7th. That's close.
5
We're
p.m.
all right there.
Anyway, the goal here is to talk about what's happening with Comcast Smart City. The Comcast folks will be there to answer questions. So that's a first step. It's also a good opportunity to bring together some of the condo managers and representatives and hopefully begin that process of a dialogue between them and CROA. I volunteered to attend that meeting. I think that was approved as a liaison for that group. The second thing I wanted to just talk about with respect to condos specifically, as some of you know, many of these condo boards are coming up on their elections, their board of directors, and so on. There's an interesting dichotomy in Celebration, as there is on so many things, that CROA has advanced its procedures and process. We now have online voting. We do some things that make our process work a little more efficiently. But some of the condominiums are still using in-person voting and paper voting and balloting. And so the questions that are being asked is that can CROA assist any of these condo boards if they wish to implement an online voting system, to use the same system that we use, which I think is called Simply Vote?
Simply Voting.
Simply Voting, which is it seems to be a pretty efficient system. Can we, it's not our position or our place to tell the condo boards what to do, but can we get engaged in that process and be of help to them? Do you know, and do we know if that's being done anywhere? I mean, are any of the condo boards using the voting procedures for their boards that we've implemented here at CROA?
As a professional in this industry, we share our knowledge with anybody that would be looking for that assistance. So I did have an email this morning from a representative from Artisan Condos asking for the contact information, and I've just asked Patrick to get that and forward that over to them. So to be an asset, to be able to share any knowledge, I think that that's very, very reasonable for what we do. Now, if we were asked to go set it up for them, I think now you're taking CROA resources and utilizing them at an association that doesn't pay for it.
Right. And are these systems expensive to implement? Did it cost us a lot of money to do Simply Voting here?
I think it cost about $1,500, maybe $2,000 when it's all said and done.
Okay. Have we ever expressed an opinion as CROA as to best practices for these condo boards in their voting and setting up of their boards and their directorships?
I don't believe you've ever formally had a condo association come to you that I can recall and ask you for best practices on how they run their voting. I'm sure, again, I think that the resources, if they want to ask us, we're available to be able to answer those questions and be able to help out with that. But from a standpoint of whether or not we think they should do it or not do it, I don't know that we really should be able to answer that question.
We don't run the condos.
Right.
I mean, we've been down these questions a few times, and there's certain things that are just outside of our purview.
This is one of them.
But to me, the broad question is, what can we do, what can/should we do to assist boards, condo boards, voting being one example, and then the other is, what can be done to assist condo residents? And I'm not talking about being an individual advocate. I mean, I'm thinking of best practices and saying, here's our recommendations, here's what the best practices are with respect to condos. If you're going to be a board member, if you're a resident and you want something and your board is not responsive or your management team is not responsive, here are the best practices. I mean, is there something that's available? To me, that's the broader question, rather than us getting into the weeds.
We see that more often, where people will call us and say, you need to do something about ABC Condo Association, and our response typically is, we can't. CROA has zero authority over what those condo association boards decide and how they want to run and operate level of service and customer service.
But to me, there's two answers to the question. One is, that is outside of our scope, we can't do that. And here's where you can go and better equip yourself to do what you are.
Right.
So I think there's two parts.
And that's typically my response, that's how you affect, if you want to affect change, here's how you can do that.
But I'm also thinking of how do we be proactive and say, here's a toolkit, or here are some resources that you as a board or you as a resident might consider using.
Well, the CAI would be the toolkit that we would recommend to anybody. I mean, there's a vast knowledge of resources available to any association that wants to utilize us.
I'm thinking, how can we proactively share that?
Right. I mean, remember, we're large-scale managers. We're running, a homeowner association. While we have the knowledge and some expertise in condos, we don't do condo association management on a day-to-day basis. So we're probably not, Susan and I might not be the best people to ask. We would send them to CAI and say there's a whole network of people that run condo associations.
Well, one of the things that I think is important for us as management, and perhaps one of the board members, I know one of our prior board members, Tim Swisher, was on a task force, and we had one meeting last year to educate the homeowner, the condo board members on the anatomy of a leak, because leaks in condos are very, very scary to deal with. Because it's manager to manager, and I do believe that it's encouraging them to attend the CAI events. And many times the boards don't understand the importance of CAI and what their management company, a manager that's on site, can learn from that. I've tried to, there's a couple of managers who have agreed to go out to lunch with me, and I personally have taken them to lunch to help develop that relationship, because I think it's them feeling comfortable to pick up the phone and say, hey, Susan, I got blah, blah, blah. Can you help me? And I give them the resource, or I point them in the right direction, and they did you know your manager doesn't know, or going even to you and saying they don't know this basic thing. I think it's about relationships.
Well, I think that there's probably two things that are very important in any industry to become a subject matter expert. One is to get your credentials, get your education and your credentials. The second is become part of your association that's involved in your industry, because there's all kinds of resources there for networking, education. There's just millions of opportunities there for you to grow and gain knowledge, and whether you're running a condo, a co-op, a vacation rental, or a large-scale community, those resources are available to you.
So our resolution here is, I don't mean a formal resolution, our thoughts here are, let's finish this conversation. Our thoughts here are?
I'd like to at least open dialogue and know who our neighbors are from those condo boards and know who they are. That would be mine.
So you're reaching out to managers?
I reach out to managers. I don't reach out to the board members.
To the managers, okay.
Are there resources we can have available? Is there a section on the website that's helpful for condos?
I can tell you, not all condo associations want to make that information public. They don't want to put their board members' information out there. We do have available on our website through our new homeowner packet every condo manager, every contact phone number, email, address.
Okay.
So you get to the manager, you should be able to get to the association. That's just not the reality, though, sometimes. Some of the associations are not operating that way. Their managers are telling their residents, we won't talk to you unless you're a homeowner. And at that point, CROA can't force them to talk to you. But if you want to affect change, there's an annual election every year. And if you think that rule should be different, go to your board meetings, go to your election, vote the people in that will make that rule change.
Well, and I think to that point, that's why the questions are being asked about the voting procedures and whether or not there are, I don't want to be so strong as to say irregularities, but there are challenges in some of these condo boards in actually even getting a quorum. So we've seen the boards being unable to move or be responsive. And it becomes a CROA problem later when that non-responsive board then says, we're not going to do what you want us to do with respect to maintenance and covenants and so on, and we find ourselves with a board that won't respond back to us but can't be changed by its residents. I recognize all of the limitations that you've described, and I heartily support what you're doing, Susan, in meeting and creating that. If we thought it was important enough to have a task force to talk about leaks, and God knows I look over at Todd and I think leaks, then I think we should also have a task force or an opportunity to talk about good management of condo associations, fair and free elections. I mean, I think that these are fundamental points to how these condos are being run that ultimately come back and impact our ability as a CROA board to work with the elected representatives of these condo boards. So I'd like to see us schedule something in that same vein as the workshop on leaks to talk about voting and elections and what resources at one time we could bring together and put in one spot and say, here they are, here's CAI, whatever it might be.
And here's what simply voting might cost.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, one of the things that there are some fairly significant changes for homeowners associations and especially for condos that went into effect on July 1. And I know Larson, our general counsel, has not had their first update, and that might be the subject that we invite Larson to come here and invite the condominium association boards to come here and be educated.
That's a great...
Yeah.
That'd be terrific.
So wasn't there a term limit imposed that might affect Sienna, for example, or?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know anything about the condos. I'm not going to confuse myself by knowing the condo law. So,
Barbara.
Okay, yeah. Last comment.
While you're talking about communications earlier, just a thought, perhaps putting something out as a short article about CAI and what kinds of best practices they could offer to condo associations and others.
Yeah. Good article.
That's a great idea, Barbara.
Great idea.
And just for the public's information, CAI, would you like to?
Oh, yes. CAI is the Community Associations Institute, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's the educational arm of managing associations. So through there they have designations up to and including your PCAM, which Steve is almost ready to take his. I have my PCAM, which is a professional manager of community associations, and it gives you the best practices to implement things, and it also gives you a wide network of other people who may be in the same circumstance as you. They have forums and things like that.
And they have their own online forums and listservs, and someone can post a question and get responses from it.
One last point to make. I also think this is timely as we think about Island Village. Island Village is clearly in the market talking to management companies, trying to figure out what they're going to do. They've announced that.
That is not a true
It's not true. As of Friday.
As of Friday, okay.
Or Thursday.
No, I mean,
okay.
That is not what they're trying to do at all. You may have heard something, but it's not what they're trying to do.
Okay. So Island Village won't have a management company.
They'll have the same one.
They'll have the same. They're part of us.
Celebration.
Okay. They're part of us.
They legally understand they have no ability to challenge it.
Okay. I'm delighted to hear that.
But yes, with Island Village coming on, and there will be apartments and condos. There will be
condos.
Wait, I don't know about condos.
What happened Friday?
Thursday. Sorry, Thursday.
What?
We'll have.
Well, I'd like to hear what happened Friday. Is it on the agenda?
We had the ad hoc group that meet with Mattamy. We asked if that was true. They said they are not talking about other managers.
Okay.
It's all part of one management company.
They haven't signed yet, right?
That's
They haven't signed yet.
Well, but they're part of Celebration.
Right.
They're part of Celebration.
Makes sense.
They acknowledge legally they don't have a choice.
So it's your, okay, just to be clear, because we've not received any communication, other board members, about this.
Right.
Their position is that they are part of CROA, obviously, and that they will not be hiring management companies for their apartments or condos or any other organization within.
Apartments would be separately managed
They're just talking about
and built.
They are no different than Artisan Park. Artisan Park hired Evergreen, but that was after CROA. Somebody's corrected. That was after CROA approved it. They understand legally they have no choice.
Well, I think we need to be careful saying they're not different than Artisan, because Artisan does have supplemental documents that are written for exclusive common usage of their facilities. When we talked to them about that, they said we have no intention of making these exclusive common usage. They should be amenities that every resident that lives in Celebration has the opportunity to partake in.
And
that is
full
correct.
disclosure,
They're not trying to
Artisan started that way as well, though.
Artisan started as a 55 and over community and converted to have a special niche, a exclusive common use.
Why is
facility.
the
always started with that.
But why is the clubhouse owned by CROA then?
So let's. Can we not go?
No, I'm just trying to understand.
Can we not get too far off? The update on Mattamy, that's a longer history. The update on Mattamy is the apartments would be built and managed by a separate apartment developer.
Okay.
That's the latest update. The rest would be CROA. They have not determined what the 30,000, up to 30,000 square feet of business would be like. That is not yet determined.
Commercial.
Commercial, I'm sorry, yeah, commercial, thank you. The school will be built by the county and run by the county, and
K through 5.
yeah, K-5 school, and what was the other piece with that?
Well, I guess
But
I'm
that's
confused
it.
because Evergreen announced that they were meeting with Mattamy to talk about a management contract, so I'm trying to figure out what they're trying to manage.
Some other community, perhaps.
Some other community.
No, they said it was our, they said
Well,
it was our.
I don't care what they said.
Not true
I mean,
according to
we specifically
Madeline.
asked
Okay.
the question.
So there's no service area, there's no condominium grouping, there's nothing in Island Village, to your understanding, that would require a separate management company. That's all I'm trying to clarify.
That's correct.
Okay.
That is exactly correct.
Okay.
And that was a meeting Thursday.
The honest to God truth with you is they're still waiting for approval for the entry road. So there is, which is why we're putting the article in the paper. We said we'd go to the athletic fields and we'd come back to that. They're finding out that, just like we have gopher tortoises that are along the athletic field, they're still waiting to get approval for the entry road still.
Yeah.
They're still...
At the county level.
They haven't, when you talk about Phase 1, they haven't even released anything to TCC yet because they're still developing it internally. They understand legally they're under CROA. They understand CCMC is the manager. You were there. I mean, we heard the rumors, we asked the very specific questions, and the answer was no.
Well, and they made a statement at a public meeting, public workshop, that one of their goals is to make Island Village inclusive into Celebration. And they realize that's a challenge because it's so far away. The proximity is not right next to Celebration. So we've reiterated that by any type of exclusive common use elements down there would do the exact opposite of what they're trying to accomplish. And they agreed.
Mattamy is doing a lot of building around the United States and Florida, and they have a lot of people who want to talk to them about anything and everything, just like they've talked with CCMC.
I am simply repeating what a management executive at Evergreen said in a public meeting in Artisan Park. I'm delighted to hear that's untrue.
We heard that and asked that specific question.
And I would just ask as a courtesy that if those kinds of meetings occur between board members, that you would communicate with us in advance of this to tell us that.
Yeah. This is the ad hoc group that's regularly meeting.
I don't need a formal report, but a heads up would be nice, Brian.
Well, it's no different than the other meetings that you've had. The minutes, the notes are being put together. They're going to be distributed to the board. It was last Thursday, and I think it was
It was actually Thursday afternoon. I wrote the minutes on Saturday morning.
And there was but I want to make sure we don't start down that path again, because we did get this way a lot last year, and that's not what is happening at all. You have a lot of these separate groups set up, and there are notes being taken.
We had another one on Friday with a different
and the information is being distributed amongst the board for every one of these meetings.
Yeah, we met with the
appreciate
county
that.
on Friday, and I did those minutes on Saturday, too.
I appreciate all of those things. My point really was to say that in talking about condo boards and direction, that it might be helpful with Island Village. If it doesn't impact them, we don't need to invite them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, in fact, that wouldn't impact them.
Okay.
All right, so closure on that. Yeah.
Now that you've finally gone back to bringing the condos back into it, the one thing I think you can do is, as the CROA board, is to talk about and maybe put out information about the advantages of residents voting online. As somebody who helps and Gary worked with me last year in Artisan Park. One of the things you find out when you're working an election is that it's so precise that you end up having to throw away, or as they say, discard or put in a can't be counted pile, a significant amount of votes. It's much easier and much less likely to happen if you're going electric. And I don't know if it would be right for you to take a position that you'd really like to encourage people to do this, but I think maybe something that a statement or an article that really says, this is something to really consider.
Well, the only thing I would challenge on that is each condo association has their own set of governing documents and may have some language specific in there about how they're supposed to vote for their annual meetings. And then state statute drives electronic voting also. So I would say each association, if they want to start looking into it, should contact their legal counsel and get a resolution developed on how they're going to do the electronic voting.
Last comment on that. You have a relationship somewhat with Susan, with different condo managers. Could we possibly offer to allow that we print in the newspaper, hey, if you live in this association, your election is being held here, here's the manager to contact for the details. Just as another access to getting out to
facilitating condo conversations with their appropriate management.
I think that's a great thought. The key here is we got to get the condo boards
to be okay with that,
to wanting to promote and get more people out to vote. And I think that's absolutely key here to affecting change. You got to get involved in your associations.
That might be.
All right, so
can we take a 2-minute break?
Okay, 2-minute break. Come back at 11, and then we'll talk about our own communications. So should I name you for the town hall lead or no? right, our remaining agenda item.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can I just have...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I just want to clarify something that I said before the break, and to be very clear. I am delighted that we are having these ad hoc committees and groups meeting. That has been the direction of the board. I've been part of several of those, and I'm excited that there is a group meeting with Mattamy on an ad hoc basis. I have no objection whatsoever to that meeting. I also recognize that after those meetings, there is a review process to write up some minutes, get them approved by the people that were there. This issue of management and what's being said and what they're doing is has been a dynamic question up until now. It sounds like it's resolved now. I'm excited about that, but I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. These ad hoc, or what do we call them, nimble groups?
We have one nimble group.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's
we have several made up of old people. I think that these are good things. So I just wanted to clarify that so there was no misunderstanding.
Thank you for that. That's a good segue into our discussion of communication and management interactions. The intent of this is just for us to stop after 4 months of working together as a board, 4 new board members with our management team, to stop and take a look at how are we doing? How are we doing as a board? How are we doing with management? How does management view us? I think it's a separate question. I think that's where I really appreciated your comments an hour ago about town hall and hearing from residents. Hearing the resident feedback about how we're doing, I think, is a separate discussion. So I know we're now limited to about 20 minutes on this issue. I just want us to dive into that. You know, for example, we chose as a board, or I chose as your named president, to not have a weekly management meeting. That may be good, that may be not good. I would hope to hear we have not talked about that. We chose to put all things out to the board as a whole. We chose to have 2 monthly workshops. We chose to engage residents, again, rather than you have your 3 minutes at the beginning and then no more discussion. We chose to engage, and I know I'm being short with people trying to keep us on time, but try to engage residents along the way. So how is that going? How is our process going? We've changed, we've talked about this, so we changed how the board book looks, putting things out in a more, clearly streamlined electronically, and then streamlined with a summary page at the beginning. Those are changes. How are things going? How is our communication going among the 7 of us, Jack and Vaughn absent, and then from a management perspective? That's the question. Kevin's nodding heavily.
Sorry. I'm happy with it. My big thing is any emails that I send, I am sending to everybody 100%. I don't ever want to be called out for that. And that's my reason for doing it. Maybe that's a little personal of a reason, but I just want to make sure I'm never put in that position.
And I think all of us have.
And I think all of us are doing that.
Are doing that. And to me, a question is it too much? That's what we agreed to do. Except, I mean, except like, Susan, can I ask you this, or Steve, there's some individual appointment set. But is that too much, or is it okay? Is that what we want to maintain? That's the question.
I don't know if we're getting all the emails or all the information after the meetings, like after the number meetings or whatever. I don't know if we're getting good feedback, because Jackson just expressed, for example, on that. I don't know if we're getting the good feedback, like when the events coming in here. Are we getting, because it's a lot. I mean, going in so many different directions and so much time, it's hard to take all that, encapsulate it, and get it through to everybody.
But we got to be.
So we have to trust that. Yeah.
I think we've tried to make a lot of positive efforts, but if you look at the 2 meetings that David and I were in, both of them last week, the Mattamy meeting on Thursday and the county meeting on Friday, you gotta also then, especially in the Mattamy meeting, which actually Bennett then reviews them. I know it's been reviewed by management there. Every situation is different, so you can't just share every piece of everything, or all you do is shut down communication entirely. So we're trying to be totally respectful of that in what we're doing with Mattamy. We actually, on Thursday, got agreement that we'll be able to share minutes. From the June 12th, we never shared those because we actually said, okay, we'll finalize them in July, but let's not get it out in front of it, because we got out in front of it last time, which was not a good thing. And so I think the spirit of what we're doing is not creating too much work. It doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't create too much reading. I'm good at deleting the ones I don't want to read. But then we got to respect that there are certain times when you have other mitigating factors which play into the equation. That's all I'm asking.
I'd say my only comment that I'd like to add, just because I was confused when Thursday or Friday got brought up, I don't necessarily want the minutes right away or anything like that. If there was just hey, as a heads up, I'm meeting with Manamy Thursday. You don't even have to say what it's about, so that way when Thursday gets mentioned today, okay, he met with Manamy last week, got it. It's not that I'm asking for everything, it threw me off. I'm trying to keep
that is a protocol breakdown probably on my part. I will be happy in the future to just send an email saying these are the meetings that are on my calendar for the next couple of weeks. Just so people
I know it's silly, I don't mean to...
No, that's fine.
It doesn't throw anybody off.
I think one of the things that we've done that has been helpful is asking board members to act as liaisons to different organizations or groups or service areas or committees. I think that we're improving the communication between the committees and the board without burdening the entire board with each of those. I think it's also not the same as the meet and greets that you were doing last year, but it puts a board member present at events and meetings in a way that then there is a point of communication, and then if it's email communication or a phone call or just at the meeting itself physically saying here's what's important to us. So I'm pleased that we've expanded that role. I think we are a very ambitious board. I think we have been, somebody said we're a hungry board. We've taken on a lot. I'm glad that Vaughn and Jack aren't here today because we can assign more tasks to them.
Done.
But the reality is that each of us are investing an extraordinarily large amount of time in this work. And I would hope that we are not being burdensome of one another, but respectful of one another's time, whether it's email or communication or these other pieces. But I think that since we all volunteered for these positions, since we asked to be in these roles, that the fact that we're taking these jobs seriously should be a comfort to the community, that we are trying to do the right things. If we fall short, we fall short, but we are trying to be out there and we're trying to be representatives and we're trying to be listening. So my assessment is that while there may be things that aren't perfect and that are cumbersome and challenging, on the whole, in my 20-plus years of being in and around this community, I've never seen a CROA board that's been this open and this transparent.
So that was a major theme that came through in our discussions and our own guiding principles in March. Yeah. Open, transparent, and inclusive of one another. Yeah. And inclusive with management. Mm-hmm. Other reflections on, I'm going to jump on the hungry part because I've used that term. Yeah. I don't know if I copied it from someone else, but I have used that term. It's a very ambitious board, and I think we're accomplishing a lot. I think it's reflected by having 2 workshops a month, and each one is not, as in the past, it's been a couple of topics. And here we're having multiple topics. So the challenge for me is we're diving into a lot, and my question is, are we diving into too much? So do we need to slow it down a little bit?
No, that's quite the opposite.
I would say,
you don't think we're diving into too much?
I actually think quite the opposite. I think about what we're doing in communication totally differently. Communication amongst the board is working, but the real issue of communication, and we learn it painfully every once in a while, is with our community. And I think we all learned an important lesson from the magazine newspaper event that we didn't manage that one or communicate that one properly. So when I actually think about communication, I think about several people who are out here in the audience who we all recognize because we see them at many meetings. And it's almost like you've got to have a communication framework. I mean, I'll respectfully listen to Mike's thoughts earlier and think about town halls, but it's almost like it still becomes almost networks. And, a lot of what we do here, I'm learning quickly, everybody doesn't watch a workshop. Everybody doesn't watch a board meeting. But they do read the newspaper or magazine. I've changed my philosophy entirely about that mechanism. I suspect there's a lot of people out here who I know end up talking to other people because I've had people say, well, I learned this from Gary, or I learned this from Mike, or Eileen, or whoever. So it does matter, and I think that's the communication we need to measure. I would rather we would work on more than less, not have the same consistent subjects, because we've talked about the athletic fields in spades, and we all learned with an email last week that, somebody's like, nobody's telling us anything that's going on with it. You just sit there and you go dumbfounded, like, you got to be kidding me. So you keep communicating, you keep improving it, but it's the outward that matters.
So the question is, my question was, I agree 100% with communication, and that's something I've stressed before being on the board. But the question is, are we addressing too many topics? Because we have full agendas with our monthly board meeting and 2 board workshops. That's the question. Are we addressing too much?
I think we have been laying a lot of groundwork. And I would say that, we rolled out, all right, let's get the groundwork really quick for the website, let's get that squared away, and then management is taking care of it in their capacity. So how I look at it is I wouldn't want to create any other groundwork that's going to pull Patrick's time away, because now we just quickly worked on something that he's grabbed. I'd like to see more of a progress from the audience, meaning if I was sitting in their seat, am I seeing what we're seeing? Are they seeing that we're working as quickly? Is our workload too heavy? What's their opinion?
Okay.
I know that we have a lot, and I'm not discrediting that at all. I guess I'm looking to see more progress. We have a lot of big projects going on. Maybe we can get some small projects started. So website, we have fields, we have community center that we were talking about. What small projects can we look at? That might be one way.
Okay. You have your day-to-day operations that are taking place.
That are, of course, taken
every day.
No, I know. That's on you guys.
Those are the small things.
So are we too much in the weeds, or are we too much at the airplane level, or
that's
are we okay?
I think we're in the weeds. I think we're touching on everything that comes across, and we're handling a lot. I mean, and to speak of what Brian said too, that's been normal. My past experience of 3 years is I didn't think they really knew about the newspaper. That's why I was like, I didn't want to make a change on that. But it's hard to get 300 and 400 pages of every board tech information out to people and communicate it. I mean, you guys know when you first came on, you're like, that's a board packet? I'm like, yeah, that's normal. It's 300-400 pages of information. You can't feed everything to every avenue. So it is difficult. It remains a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
I think you also have to remember, you elect a new board, you have an organizational meeting in early March. By the end of the summer, you're doing the next budget, and next year we're either going to have 2 or 3 new board members and start the process all over again. Right. So, it's almost, like when you have a new administration in D.C., they think they have 2 years to get things done, and they run like hell. We don't even get that. We really get 6 months to kind of organize the thing, finalize a budget, and stick the next board with it.
Sadly.
Which raises the question when we get to charter changes about terms of office. But I think that the reality is that we are an ambitious board, and in order to be ambitious, we can't afford to be in the weeds. We can't afford to micromanage. And I think that's really a question for Steve and for Susan as to whether or not you feel like we're staying out of that realm. I think my perspective is that we are taking on big topic items. Unfortunately, or fortunately, some of these big topic items are not things you can take care of in 30 seconds and be done with. Right. So there is an ongoing dispute. And then we get to items that are, relatively speaking, quite small. The magazine versus newspaper, in the scope of community centers and civic centers and ball fields and some of these, and Island Village and so on, is a very small item. But it dominates our discussion and our time. So I agree with Brian. We learned a lot in that process. But I think to be effective, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to be able to take care of these day-to-day things, these smaller things, but we've also got to keep thinking long-term.
So if I might place 2 things, I think it would be good, because we had said we were going to stay out of the weeds and empower CCMC. Do they believe that? Right. Yeah. And then before we run out of time, it would be interesting to have the audience say, what the heck do they think?
Okay, I'm going to answer your question in 2 different ways. First, I think from a board standpoint, you set out with the vision of being very results-oriented, result-oriented governance. And part of doing that is you're moving a mountain, eating an elephant, however you want to describe it. Big projects like you talked about, Kevin, are going to take time. They're going to take eating one piece at a time, moving one boulder at a time to get it to where you need to go. But you've done this by breaking it into smaller groups, ad hoc groups, more nimble. And I think that makes a lot of sense because it gives you an opportunity to be more efficient and effective to get things done. Along with that, though, you have to trust in each other and you have to trust in the process. So understanding that there's going to be meetings sometimes that the minutes are going to lag a little bit, but they're coming. It's part of the process that you all established to get these big items done in a quicker, more efficient, effective manner. So you're doing it the right way, in my opinion. You're moving it in the right direction. The meetings, the first question was the weekly meetings. Meetings are all just a tool to get the results that we're looking for. If we're taking that time and we're reallocating it to more workshops, more ad hoc meetings, more small, more nimble groups, and we're getting the results in a more efficient, effective way, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think we keep going that way. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're spending the same amount of time, we're just spending our energy in different places, and it's effective so far. It's working. You have a comment about communication. I think that it's important for all of us, management, board members, these different avenues and venues out here in the audience that are the usual suspects, the familiar faces. We all have a responsibility to educate the residents because they're not as tapped into here, to educate them on the proper ways of communication here. What are the communication mediums that are effective and that will get you the facts of what you're trying to look for? That's the Celebration newspaper. That's signing up for Friday Flash. That's coming to these town hall meetings. That's going online and watching the videos. Asking us. If you don't know exactly where it is and you don't want to dig for it, ask us. We'll point it right out to you. Here's the video you need to go to. Here's the time you need to look at. So the information's out there. It's not a lack of communication. It's an education on finding the right place for it. And I think the more we all do that and the more we talk about that, the better your results are going to be. The reality here in Celebration, and reality probably in any government, is when you want to affect change to the way you want it to go, you're going to say a lot of things, even if sometimes they're not 100% factual, to try and get the way that you're moving towards. That's going to just continue to get us the same results in Celebrations we've always had. If you want to really find out how to affect change and get the results, come to a meeting. Take your time up here at the table and talk. Take your 3 minutes at a workshop. Demand a town hall meeting where you can have more interaction. But at the end of the day, the decision is going to be made by you all up here. So I think that the way you're doing it is moving in the right direction. The last thing I want to say is that you just did a survey and you had a 93% satisfaction rate from your community. That is outstanding to have a 93% satisfaction rating. I would challenge you to continue throughout this next half of the year to govern and to set vision to the satisfaction of 93%. We can spend a lot of time trying to convince the 7% that aren't happy to be happy, and they may never be happy. So continue moving in that direction that you're moving, govern to that 93% that are satisfied, and I think you'll continue to get those great results. We're going to have hiccups as we go through this. Every year boards change, we're trying to figure out how to interact with each other. Hiccups are going to be there. It doesn't mean that they're obstacles that are going to stop us from getting where we want to go. You are looking at results and you're working towards getting those. So I think so far, I would give it a positive rating. I think this is a good format, a good model. Let's keep doing it.
Susan, you're nodding.
I agree. I think it's working very well for us. I love the new board packet format for the audience. If someone's interested in an action item, whatever that is, all they have to do is drill down and they can see all the background information. That board packet is an educational tool, not only for you as a board, but also for the members of the community that are interested. So I think it's working really well.
And I think part of what you were saying, Steve, and I know this has been important for Kevin and myself and the entire board actually, is the revamping of the website. It is hard for many of us who go back to it regularly to find things that we're looking for in an easy way. It's just, it needs major work. And I know that's not going to be the answer to all of communication, but it will certainly help.
I think
but it certainly will be
when
helpful.
Residents understand that it's so important for this CROA board to govern us in that direction, that you've made it part of your strategic focus areas, and you are concentrating on your strategic focus areas to get the highest and best results from those areas. You're moving in those directions. You're not allowing interruptions or complications to get in your way from doing that. I think focus is key. Focus is going to always be key. There's 7 different personalities on the board of looking for a different direction. Debate, focus, get a consensus, and then move forward. And that's how the system works. And
to me, it's about
moving in the right direction. It's so easy to get caught up in the weeds, though, and to get muddled up. I think you're doing a good job of avoiding that. Even if we have a hiccup, I see you all regroup very quickly and come right back together and make things happen.
Yeah, to me, it's focus and priorities, and we can't do it all, but we are doing a lot.
Right.
And I appreciate your pulling back out the 93% are satisfied. We still want to keep tweaking and try. We can always do better. Even if we had 100% satisfied, we can still do better.
Sure.
Things that other residents may not see that are behind, it's that infrastructure that we're trying to make better.
Right. And growth's always going to happen. Change, growth, you can't stop that from happening. But it doesn't, we don't need to get caught up in negativity, rumors, those types of things. That's what gets us muddled up and when we just don't make any progress. This is very positive, moving forward towards the results.
We have 3 minutes left, and I know you're looking at me.
No, I mean, let's just wander over a little. I mean, I'd really like to hear if the public has comments.
And I also know that there were 2 items that may need 1 minute, because we're looking at future agenda items. Are there any comments from the audience at this point? I know that we may re-engage the same discussion in a few months. Any comments on this?
My name's Gary McCall. My focus is the Artisan Club condos. We have a lot of issues there. We have not had an election since 2014. We just have a lot of work to do. And so I would say to you folks, you are a wonderful model for what we could aspire to be. And thank you for your openness. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for willing to disagree and discuss things as a group. That is so healthy. Sometimes we think we have to do it perfect. Sometimes just doing it good and not getting caught in trying to be perfect really does help, because you can get a lot more accomplished when you just say, we're going to do it well, and y'all are doing that. I'm relatively new to this process. This is my first time that I've been to a meeting, and it just feels really good to be here. And I know some of you, but some of you I do not. So I just appreciate being here and what you're doing for all of our community. And I would just say keep doing that.
Thank you for being a new face in the room. Thank you very much.
New face on the camera.
Yeah, there you go. You can scroll down to an hour 57 minutes and find yourself.
With a red arrow.
Thank you very much.
Jim Hyman, 1401 Celebration Avenue, and there's definitely, I've noticed a world of difference in the short time I've been here in terms of workshops and board meetings. I mean, they seem to be on point. David, you were on a great meeting, and it really is, the conversation, at workshops and board meetings is certainly, wildly meaningful, and you guys pretty much keep it on point. I would echo, Gary's comments, that in terms of nothing's ever going to be perfect. We have people, within Celebration, I think, that would win the lottery and would still complain. So, you're not going to please all the people all the time. So keep doing what you're doing. And I think, just being on the APC committee, or APC, I should say, and, having Jackson, who seems to regularly attend our meetings, I think is hugely beneficial. And I think, and I would hope and maybe assume that, the board members are going to other meetings of, different areas within Celebration, because I think it's important that you guys can go to, I don't care whether it's Georgetown, I don't know how their communities operate, but, that way there should be no surprises. I mean, if you guys and, Jackson's at our meetings and knows what's going on and, any potential issues, I would think that would be huge for you guys to know what is going on, what are the issues, and, kind of get out in front of it before it really, creates a more major issue and, you're not blindsided by something. So I would definitely encourage that in terms of being in the community that way. So.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have one more thing to add. Jim triggered a thought in my head. And while I have an active audience here, I might as well get it out. I do want to challenge us, and it's not just your responsibility, but management's responsibility also, to continue to work towards that elusive 90-minute CROA board meeting. I think they're more efficient. They're definitely more effective. It's the unicorn of meetings, but I know we can find one here eventually. And if we can get them to 90 minutes, I think that would be the best way for us to get it out.
So
Everybody looks that way.
it's not quite well taken. However, and I have a serious point to make about this. You can't drop a 300-page board packet on us 48 hours before the meeting and expect us to do our jobs properly and answer it. Now, I've taken an hour or two every meeting before the meeting with Susan to go through the board packet, and it has been very, very helpful for me to do that. I don't know what changes have to be made in order to get the board packet to us earlier and in a form that we can work with. But there were items on the last board packet that were a complete surprise to me that they showed up, not that night, but when I saw the board packet. That we've got to do a better job, you've got to do a better job of telegraphing what's coming down the line so that we can do a better job of preparing so that we don't have to spend time in a board meeting asking questions about those items because we had no idea that they were there. And the quick example of that was the $100,000 landscaping. That's a big expenditure, and I understand that it's a regular yearly or multi-yearly event, but how in God's name did you expect us to know that?
I agree totally with your comment. It's not their problem, it's our problem. In the corporate world, I mean, Mike and there's other people out there, you have board packages, they have strict deadlines, those come out, boards tell you they want the materials so many days in advance, and it requires something extremely major to do that. I think we, as a board, should say, we want the board package on X date. And by the way, that's when the cutoff happens.
So what I think we get is actually 6 days ahead.
It is.
I think we got it on, we get it on a Thursday, and what I take on myself is to work through that during the weekend and pose questions, which I had about 20 on the last board packet, by Monday.
Well, if we dissect what Jackson said here, 300, 400 pages of a board packet is giving you every ounce of information that we feel that you need to be able to make a decision on those items. I think we've tweaked a little bit the process because we were doing the reserve study presentation for the boards in December, and that does you no good because you didn't get here until March. So we're tweaking that to where you can see what that annual process looks like, because those are, for us, are day-to-day. We know that they're happening. That's part of our work plan for the year. So it's duly noted. We heard you at the last meeting. You're going to get one in September, now for the last quarter, and then we'll do the next year's when we get the new board, so that the new board can see that. But again, any information, that all that you're getting for those support items are usually the 3 or 4 bids that are part of that. The every piece of the financial documentation, and not all of it has to be memorized word for word.
I'm not complaining about the detail amount, but I will just say, in terms of process, that if the board packet comes out on Thursday, and you, as president, have 20 questions that you ask over the weekend, responses start coming on Monday and Tuesday. That is an evolving board packet that we are asked to be up to date on by Wednesday night. That time frame, to Brian's point, in my view, is too short.
Well, just so that you all are aware, the process is completely written out on my whiteboard in my office, and we start putting that packet together the day after the last meeting. So to get it when you're getting it, which is 6 days prior to your next meeting, we are starting that process the day after the last meeting. There's a lot of work to turn all this around and get this to you in the time that you're looking for. So moving it up, I think will just make it less effective. You're not going to get the information that you need to be able to make the decisions.
I'm sorry, I'm not disagreeing with any of this. I think that in order to get to that quick board meeting, a lot of it should be open and shut decisions were decided on. It's the formal process. I don't I personally would like to not see something go into a board packet or a board meeting if it wasn't at a workshop first. It might be something as simple as the landscaping that could be an easy thing, and the board packet could include the bids, but hey guys, as a heads up, this is the landscaping that's going to happen, this is where it's going to be, look forward to the bids that are going to come in, we'll make our recommendation, boom, we say yes, that's a great one to go with.
And that's
I think if we touch on it in a workshop, then it can be at a board meeting.
And that's a reframing of your mentality going into this, because you wanted the big items that were outside of above and beyond either reserve or day-to-day operations to be part of these workshops. And then the day-to-day and the stuff that was scheduled to be done becomes part of the regular board meetings.
Because it seems to me that's what's holding us up in the
Now,
board
you
meetings.
reached the financial items, the norms, the ones that we know, not the big topics, financial items, and had those workshops and had the questions answered. I've just always thought for a couple years that would have been the easiest thing to break out, because it's by the time you get to those, we still have questions, and we really haven't had an opportunity to go through it. It would throw off a complete schedule, but once you got into the...
Evolve into it.
Yeah, once you got into the routine, it would be easier, because the people really that are coming here aren't as interested in the 3 bids for paint as they are for the newspaper or for the ball fields or whatever their community...
So your level of subject matter expertise when it comes to landscaping, we have Albert Riddle review it, we have Todd review it, who has expertise there. We're bringing it to you as a recommendation based on this is all the research, all the work that we've done, and we've gotten the 3 bids. And then there's multiple additional questions on top of that. That's part of what we talked about in setting up this framing of how you want to operate. How far in the weeds do you want to get? How much do you want to spend on it?
It's just not a surprise. It's just, hey, this is what we're doing. As a heads up, you'll see these 3 bids in there. Albert's going to approve it. Everything is good to go. We just need the formality of approving it. It's just so I'm not surprised. I think that will...
Yeah, I think some of the things, like when I'm writing up the reaction, some of those are meant, as I've shared with Susan and Steve, meant as instructive so that type of question doesn't come up again. So that's addressed in the summary page. Some of those should have been addressed so that we see it all. And I think the other thing is knowing that there's a big ticket item. Here's the big deal that we need to be focusing on in September, or a couple big things that are coming down the pike in October, some of which would need a workshop, some may not. But
one of your regular suspects. I think that was the terminology. I'm going to try not to preach here, but I've been to this movie a few times. So you, right now, the last few minutes, you've been in the weeds, when you're really in the weeds. And I had a conversation with one board member. We were talking about things. And I said, you really have to know, it's not either or. You have to know when to work in the business and when to work on the business. And I think you were just to work in the business, detail into the weeds, get things done, execute, get closure. Work on the business, build capacity, build ability, build performance criteria, things like that. You've got to know where you are on those. I think what you had here was the unicorn of a 90-minute CROA board meeting, and then you delved into all the details and everything that's contained, and you got in the business when maybe you should have been working on the business, and saying things to Steve like, okay, so there's a lot of stuff in this package. Do we have to have everything at the same frequency, or can it be different frequency? Go through and start to purge and figure that out. Can we have, let's go for 2 meetings a quarter that are going to be 90 minutes and 1 meeting that's going to be 3 hours maybe. But change the structure, give him some guidance, and tell him to go work on it for you. I think that's working on the business. And I think you've really got to know when you're in one position or the other. It's hard, and when you get in it, you start chasing things. You got to be each other's conscience almost. Somebody in the room's got to be the step back and say, wait, hold it, let's look at this a little differently. So I don't mean to preach, but with one board member, I had this conversation, and then one of the boards I sit on that's a startup, I've had that conversation with this individual, and he has a particular subject matter expert, and getting him to work on the business, not in the business, as the owner and the chairman, is really tough. But you got to continue to check yourself and look at that. So empower Steve to go and figure out how to get this done for you and restructure it. But you're going to have to do a restructure. I think chasing all the various components that are creating this, it's a bird walk.
Thank you.
I was not the board member Mike spoke to, but like on the last package, I don't read the details. Meaning, if there's something that I'm really curious about, but we said when we started, we were going to trust management. So what I want to understand, with our new top page, we already say, was it in the reserve study? Is it in line with it? This is the recommendation in that. And I feel, I know, Jackson, you love getting into the details, but getting into the details where in areas where we've empowered management really gets us into the weeds. And I think there, at some point, we have to develop trust.
Yeah.
And you can disagree with me. I'm just throwing that out as to where I.
Well, I think we all have different styles. I think Mike's point is right. Being on the business and in the business are two different things. But structurally, we're trying to turn a very big ship here. And turning that big ship will require moments when we have to be very direct about what's going on, and moments when we can be more philosophical about what's going on. The question of what information we get, when we get it, and how we respond to it, I think needs to be addressed. Whether or not these need to be 90-minute board meetings or not, that's a nice goal. There are times when I would rather take an extra 30 minutes and get it right, and there are times when maybe that's not so critical. But ultimately, when we're asking ourselves in this kind of a setting, how are we doing, this is one of the frustrations that I think has to be expressed, and I don't think I'm the only board member that has this frustration.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's a balance. I mean, when we look at taking management's recommendation, that would have been, for example, on the magazine, whereas I guess from living here so long or whatever, my heart was so many people were near and dear to the newspaper, and that may have not have been the best for the residents which we represent. So again, it is a tough balance, but it's something we have to continually strive for.
Okay.
I'll make it short. Gary Hutsmith. I agree with Mike. There is a whole schedule of events that management is working in the background that is continuous over decades, between the facilities master plan, the contract schedule, the service areas, and you just mentioned it just a while ago, the reserve study. Thank you. There is a recurring schedule of events that happens every year and every 3 and every 5 years, and they have to put together the schedule to make it all happen. No matter who gets elected at the board, it's keeping celebration the way it is, so we have a 93% satisfaction rate. Okay, so probably what you're missing is the big picture of that schedule of what they're doing on a daily basis, because we hired them to manage the town. So I don't ever get upset with them about bringing up something that's already on the schedule. It's time to revisit this. The reserve study set aside this amount, and their recommendation is they're going to do that. I would never get upset with them about that, but it's always good to revisit it. If you need to know more about that, then separately, probably you can have that discussion and not take up time during an important meeting like this. Thanks.
Okay. Wrapping this one up, I do appreciate the board's involvement. I appreciate the disagreement, and I also appreciate the open communication that's happening. So, and again, Gary and Mike, thank you, particularly for your comments. The last agenda item is there were some brief discussion, potential agenda items for future workshops. I know that hurricane plan review and Halloween planning, those are out there. We are in hurricane season. Halloween will happen on October 31st. I know that
I requested if we could have the time. We really don't. My only request would be if management could just have it in the back of your head for both things and possibly see what we can brainstorm next workshop.
You want to put those on the agenda for next? These are future agenda.
What relationship we can reach out to maybe commissioner, the county, or the sheriff's office, or whatever the case is. It's just
for both
remind them how busy celebration gets during Halloween, and just keep being the bug in their ear. Not saying that we're picking up the cost or whatever the case is. Just be the bug in their ear nonstop to make sure they have the people to assist with traffic flow. It's not our responsibility, but it affects our residents.
And the development district has this conversation annually also. So we'll work with them wherever we can to say, get us the officers. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds, so we'll have that conversation later.
So you want that as an agenda item on the next workshop, which is 3 weeks from today?
10 minutes. Just touch
10 minutes.
That.
We're talking about Halloween on that.
Yeah.
Item D was the management consultant review process. Just to inform the rest of the board, we do have a preliminary meeting with Dr. David Mitchell. He is a PhD from the University of Central Florida. He's a management consultant on homeowner associations. He was introduced to us through David Anderson. I've invited Steve and Joe Cook to be with us. It is a preliminary meeting this Thursday morning here to just talk about the scope of services, the scope of a review. In the agreement that was signed with CCMC, the last contract, it provides for the possibility of doing such an audit and with the cooperation of CCMC, and so we are beginning that early stage, and so I'd like to have that on a future board workshop so that we could update you and get some direction from the board as a whole as to what direction
Let's
to go.
plan that for the next workshop because you'll have more information.
Right.
In my introduction, I have not met him. I reached out in several different dimensions, places to find who might be able to serve as a management consultant. I actually identified him a year ago. We had a phone conversation. I have not met him. I will stop in briefly during your all's discussion just to say hello and meet him.
Right, and if any board members want to be here, 9:30, 851 building on Thursday.
Okay, just no more than 3.
But no more than 3.
Hurricane. So we'll also have hurricane plan review. I know we had that a month or so ago. Let's do that again in 3 weeks. Anything else jumping that you want to have at the first workshop in August? Second workshop was our proposed executive session. Not our proposed, our scheduled executive session on personnel. Anything else jump out? Will we have anything on equipment investments? Because that'll feed into the longer-term budget.
Part more of the budget conversation.
Of that date, that particular date? I mean, of that all-day session?
Yes.
So we'll have information then that would feed in?
With numbers and anything that ties to
like
what it's going to cost you.
Investing X amount in irrigation would save, and okay, so we'll have details then. Okay.
I would like to add one other item.
Please.
Updating the Parks and Facilities Master Plan. I would like to talk about that. There has been a resolution passed by the Artisan Park Committee requesting that a playground in Artisan Park be put on our agenda. It's part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Okay.
But I think it's worthwhile, since we've got this on the agenda already, to just talk about it.
Okay.
And it is on the...
It's on the plan, yes, I realize that. I think they're just asking...
The timing. It's a timing question.
Yeah.
Moving it up in the priorities. Okay. But that could be part of that discussion.
Absolutely.
Anything else for today? We okay with today? Good. A little over time. Thank you all for... Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.